To be one is to love. I hear this often that, if we're all one, then loving each other should be simple. It should be as simple as loving yourself, right? I am you, you are me, so I love you as you love me as I love you, that sort of thing. And of course, it's a very beautiful thing. There's lots of awakening experiences that people have, and they're extremely beautiful and profound, to see yourself and others in yourself to the point where self kind of vanishes, right? Like, what does it even mean to be myself or yourself if myself is yourself or yourself is myself? The whole myself, yourself, self thing kind of just dissipates, right? So it is, needless to say, an amazing thing to be immersed in and to embody. But the beauty of love goes much, much further, much, much deeper, even than that oneness. Like, to love something as if it were yourself, that's great, but would you really stop loving it if somebody flipped a switch and the metaphysics of the entire universe changed tomorrow to where duality was an objective truth? People will say, okay, yeah, duality is true, but it's sort of like an illusory truth. It's an illusion. It's not really real. So what if somebody flipped a switch tomorrow and made it real? Would you really stop loving what you love if that happened? I tend to have faith in the idea that you wouldn't. I think you would still love what you love even if everything changed. I don't think it would put a dent in your love at all. We love what we love. I mean, picture, this is going to sound super cliche, but a mother, laying eyes on her child for the first time, a mother or a father, any parental figure. I mean, you're holding and coddling your own child. I mean, that in most cases, there's a deep transcendental love there. And yeah, okay, if that parent were to have like an awakening or a realization of oneness, okay, yeah, it would become infinitely more beautiful than it already is, because you're not just now coddling your child, you're coddling and nurturing yourself, right? You see yourself behind the eyes of your own child. So that's endlessly more beautiful than it already was. But where it gets infinitely more beautiful than even that is, what if that were not the case? Now, I'm not saying that it's not the case. I'm not saying like, oneness is false. I've talked a lot about particularly explosive oneness here on my channel, like a oneness that's independent of oneness. So I'm not saying that you should like believe that oneness is false or believe that oneness is true. I'm saying whatever you believe, whether you think it's real or even if you've awakened to the fact that it's real, maybe it's not even a belief, maybe it's a realization. But whether you believe it or you realize it, just whatever you believe or realize to be the case, all I'm asking is, if it weren't the case, would you still love that child? I think you would. In most cases, I think a parent's love would be strong enough to hold. Again, even if everything changed at the flip of a switch, I think it would still hold. And that's the beautiful thing, like, okay, yeah, love is a strong bond. It's like oneness. Okay, so we could think of oneness as like a strong bond, like everything is bonded together. And love is reminiscent of that sort of a bond, right? Everything just sticks together. There's all that glue. Everything is indivisible. But I think the bond of love is even stronger than the bond of oneness, because I think even if the bond of oneness were to break and everything were to be separate and there was to be this manyness or this objective duality, I think the bond of love would still hold. So yes, it's beautiful to look down at that child of yours and think, okay, they're me. Like, I already love them, but now that they're me, I can see even more depth in what that means. But where it gets even more beautiful is upon the return to the ordinary of, well, does that really even matter? What if they were separate? What if nothing had ever changed? What if the view that I had before, false or not, what if it were the truth? What if we really were separate? Couldn't I still love them then? Right? Even if you break that bond of oneness, the bond of love can still be there. So love is stronger than oneness. It's more powerful than oneness. It's deeper than it. It's something that can be there even if the other thing is not, even if it completely vanishes, even if it never existed. Let's not even entertain the idea of flipping a switch where we move from oneness to duality. Let's just say that duality had always been the case. There had never been oneness. Let's say you had never even had a concept of oneness. You could never even think up or imagine the very concept of it. Would you still be able to love that child? I think you would. I think you could love that child even if you had never been able to even imagine the very concept of oneness, let alone have it be the case. So oneness, or even more so love is independent of oneness. It's not just that oneness is independent of oneness, like the explosive oneness I've talked about before. Love is independent of oneness. Because see, oneness is a specific metaphysical view. Technically speaking, it's a metaphysical view in the sense that it asserts something about the nature of reality. That's all that metaphysics is. It's the study of the nature of reality. So to assert something about the nature of reality is a metaphysical assertion. It's a metaphysical claim. So oneness in that vague sense, at least, is a metaphysical claim. But see, love is independent of all metaphysical claims. Meaning, if you really love something, would you be able to love it no matter what the metaphysical truth is? Oneness, manyness, or otherwise. See, if it's a strong enough love, it can be independent of all that. So this is where we get into another thing, which is, does reality itself need to be love? This is another thing that people will talk about. They'll say that reality is love. And again, like I said earlier with oneness, the point of this video is not to get you to think that it is or isn't, right? In fact, I'm going to make a video in the future where I talk about how reality could be considered love in the sense of okay, if it's trivial and all-inclusive, like what I talk about through my condition, then yeah, you could say it's absolutely unbiased and therefore it's all-accepting, and in that sense you could say it's loving in the sense that it's unifying or all-inclusive. But of course, it's going to be an explosive love in the same way that you have an explosive oneness. So it's going to be a love that includes it not being love. So it's going to be all sorts of other things like fear and anger and happiness, indifference. It's going to be all those things too, because if it really loves everything, then it also loves things that aren't love. So it has no problem being non-love, just as it has no problem being love. So, it's explosive love. It's love that is independent of love itself. So I'll make a video on that in the future, but that's besides the point for right here, right now. Whether or not reality is love, could you still love what you love? Does reality need to be love in order for a mother to love her child? That's another beautiful thing about love is, let's just say that the nature of reality were absolute malicious hatred. I think even amidst that malice and that chaos, a mother's love would still find its way into the heart of her own child. I think if that love is strong enough, it could survive that malice, no matter how deeply existential it is in nature. I think it could break through that. Now, okay, yeah, trivially, there's exceptions to everything I'm saying in this video, but that's the case with all the videos I make. I'm always going to be undercutting myself and undermining myself. But just speaking simplistically, I think if the love is strong enough, it would cut through all of that. It does not matter how divided the universe is. It does not matter how chaotic it is. It does not matter how malicious it is. Love could survive all of that. It can survive all of that if it is strong enough. It is independent of all of that. So the metaphysics does not matter. It does not matter if reality is one. It does not matter if it's many. It does not matter if the nature of reality is love or hatred or indifference or anything else. Love is independent of all of those metaphysical positions. A mother who loves her child can love the child, no matter which one is true. So going back to what I mentioned earlier, yes, it is a beautiful realization to see yourself in others, see others in you, such that that entire boundary isn't even there anymore. It doesn't even make sense. But even deeper than that, what's so much more artistic and what has so much deeper of a level of transcendental beauty is the idea that even if we flipped a switch and went back to normal, before you had that realization or that experience of oneness, even if we flipped everything back to normal, you could still love. Nothing would change that. You could still find that in your heart, right? So it doesn't even really matter. It's like the realization is beautiful, but it's so beautiful that it's not even needed. It doesn't even need itself, right? It is selfless. I mean, it's one thing to love a child as if it were you, but it's another thing to love that child even if it's not you. Even if you're never going to be that child and you never have to take care of it because you never have to take care of yourself. If you can love it, even if it just is entirely irrelevant to your own life, that says something much deeper about the nature of love. That is a much stronger testament to the nature of love, right? It's one thing to love something which is you, because if something is you, then it's relevant to you. But if something is not you and is never going to be you and is entirely irrelevant to you, and yet you still love it, then that bond is there even in separation. This is where any of you could steal a song lyric from me if you want free reign over it. It's like, you can love me as if I am you, but if we were broken in two, would you still love me then? Right? The bond can last, that separation, even if the bond of oneness is broken. So it's not really necessary. The metaphysics does not need to be there. The metaphysics can be anything. You don't even need metaphysics in order to love. You don't have to entertain any specific metaphysical position. And you can fact check me on this, but I believe this was one reason that the Buddha, back in his lifetime, used to teach that we should not commit to any specific metaphysical position. Now, I don't fully agree there. I agree to an extent, obviously, given that a lot of the topics that I discuss on this channel are metaphysically independent, meaning they are compatible with any and all types of metaphysics. So in that sense, I agree, but I wouldn't necessarily say that metaphysics is unimportant to the same extent that maybe the Buddha did. But either way, there's value to be gleaned from this that, again, fact check me here, but if this is historically accurate, the Buddha taught his disciples not to focus on oneness or manyness. He stayed on a middle path, right? He told his disciples not to commit to one extreme or another extreme. And that was the case with regards to metaphysics as well. Oneness is one extreme of metaphysics. Manyness is another. It's like, don't commit to either extreme, because whichever one you commit to, it's not automatically going to make you a better person. It's not automatically going to make you more loving. It's not automatically going to make you more compassionate or more willing to ease the suffering of others. You can find just as many justifications for love in manyness as you can for love in oneness. Right? You can love a child who is separate from you and is irrelevant to you, just as you can love a child who is you and is therefore directly relevant to you. Likewise, you can be an asshole and find just as many justifications for being an asshole in oneness as you could in manyness. For example, I want to steal that guy's money over there. Well, they're me, so I get to decide for them, right? Okay, maybe I reincarnate into them in the future or something like that because we're all one and I'll have my money taken at that point. Okay, I don't care. I'd rather have the money now than I would then. So I don't care if I'm going to have it taken then. I want it now. See, there's all sorts of ways you can justify good or corrupt behavior using oneness or manyness. You can justify good behavior with manyness as well as oneness. You can justify corrupt behavior with oneness as well as manyness. So this is why I think the Buddha taught the middle path. You don't need to inherently commit to one or the other. Oneness or manyness, it does not matter. You can be compassionate or lack compassion in either case. Love and compassion transcends those metaphysical positions. It transcends those commitments. It's independent of them. It's not tethered to them. This is something I've talked a little bit about in videos of mine in the past, before I, reformatted the channel and all that. But I had never made, like a succinct video dedicated specifically to this topic. So I wanted to make one now because it is something that keeps recurring. I see all the talk of oneness and its relationship to love. And again, yeah, certainly there is a relationship there, but the love can go even deeper than that, such that even if there is a relationship, it's not necessary. Love can survive whether or not it does. It can be there regardless. Even if it vanishes completely, even if its own self vanishes completely, it can still be there. You can still find ways to be compassionate no matter what is true. It's something to be cultivated in of itself, right? Yet it doesn't even need itself. It's sort of selfless in that manner. Hopefully that's clear enough, but yeah, kind of just ponder on that. Think about how much further the bond goes, how much deeper it goes, how independent and self-sustaining it can be. And with that, I'll see you all next time. Create a nice day.